what's easy is punching a clock, but then what's hard is not being able to afford groceries, not being able to retire, not being able to go on vacation. And so we have to pick our hard. We have to change our mindset. We need to become the banker. We need to become the business owner. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. All right, Tarisa and I are going to talk a little bit about something different that we haven't really done before, but obviously we're going to weave infinite banking into it. We are both huge Codie Sanchez fans over here, and I really like to, I'm not like fangirl fan, but I like to listen to what she has to say. And I have not taken her course yet on how to buy a small business and all that kind of stuff, but Tarisa has. So I want to review it because this is basically me interviewing Tarisa on what she learned. But I then also want to figure out how infinite banking can be weaved into that, because I am certain that Cody forgot about infinite banking. Maybe she doesn't even know about infinite banking. I don't know. I've not spoke to her yet. And so until Tris and I can get to her, the girl's probably out there and doesn't even know we exist. But we have, I do believe when people are buying businesses and we're in the business world, just leave out real estate, because Cody's not in real estate. I'm not huge. Tarisa loves real estate. I'm not a huge real estate fan, even though I have some, but it's not my favorite. And so the act of buying businesses and buying these failing, not necessarily failing businesses, but we got boomers that are leaving businesses. And there's this huge influx of people getting out and younger people wanting to start. And so let me start with this, Tarisa, before we get into how the course was and what you all learned. Does she talk anything about the fact that the younger generation is not seeing the benefit of buying a business versus starting their own?
Let me make sure I understand your question correctly. Is it basically like you're asking what's better for younger people, starting their own or buying one?
Financially, yes. So I find that the younger generation or younger people, or just, and maybe it's not young people. I guess I shouldn't probably put an age on it, because there's people of all ages that don't see the value in buying a business when they're like, I could just start a business. Why would I buy this business and give this guy all this money when I can just go steal all his clients? Well, because you have to market and you have to get started. And if you buy a business, you're buying clientele and you're buying money right away.
If that's your attitude, you probably haven't started a business. Because I think that starting a business is something that's so glamorized. And
that is a mic drop moment.
Yeah.
And end right there.
Right. And end a podcast. Yeah, if that's your attitude, you haven't started a business, because there's so much that goes into it. Blood, sweat, tears, money, sleepless nights, just making sure that you can do everything in your power to make sure that your business is successful. And it's not like, okay, year 1, year 2 are great. It's like you still need to make sure that you're doing what you need to for year 3 to be great. So it's really like, I think you kind of hop off one treadmill to just jump on another one, is how I view starting a business. Whereas buying a business is fantastic,
it's
because
just that one treadmill you were walking, the other one you're running.
Yeah.
And there's no stopping.
Exactly. And the one that you're running on, people are like throwing things at you.
And the one you were walking on, you got to punch out at 5 and stop it. Like you got to pull the plug until in the morning, and then you had to start it again. But
right.
The other one, yeah, tomatoes, milk, bread, tar, feathers, like it's all
whatever.
Coming.
Yes, it's all coming towards you, and you still have to stay on the treadmill.
Don't miss a beat.
So that's not the most positive disposition I suppose to leave you guys with.
Only the fittest survive. That is when you're starting a business. But does she talk about that at all?
So I'm going to do my best to kind of give you guys the nuggets that I was left with. But she didn't dive too much into that, other than the fact that most businesses don't last past 5 years. So if you know that to be true, when you buy a business that is already successful and profitable, what you're doing is you're kind of buying a properly structured whole life policy in year like 15. Like, how many of those do you want to buy? And as me personally, as many as possible, because that thing's already up and running. Someone already took the time and energy to get it to where it's at today. And I get to reap the benefits of that because they don't want to deal with it anymore.
Right. They went through the capitalization stage. They've gained all the clients. They've probably got the building. They've got all the equipment. They've got the experience of what not to do. They've got the name recognition. You've capitalized that business just like you're capitalizing your life insurance policy.
Right.
And so it's like starting, I've heard this too, and maybe she alluded to this, that and I interviewed about, when I started in this industry, I went around town and interviewed about, I think it was like 200 business owners. And I had a common question for them is, how long did it take you to get going? And they all said 5 years. Like almost every single one of them said at 5 years, I finally started to make money. And so you're 100% correct. It is very close to the life insurance policy, right? We're going to start to cash flow year 4 or 5. We've got the name recognition. We've got the clientele. Now, I suppose if you really have a crappy reputation, I don't want to buy your business. But why would I choose to steal somebody's clients and take that 5 years when I can just jump in after 5 years and that business is up and running and somebody else put the sweat equity into that?
Yeah. Well, and I think what's interesting too, because as you know, I love real estate, but if you think about inputs and outputs, like how much money should you put in versus how much you're getting out of it, buying a business is a really good idea. If you are oriented in thinking that way of like, how can I improve things? How can I add technology and systems? How can I make sure I can retain, the right employees to make sure my customers are happy? Like if you have that mindset, buying a business makes sense because you're getting something that's already like halfway through that compounding curve. It's survived a lot of things. And Codie Sanchez says, buy boring businesses, like things that are going to stay in existence for a really long time. So I don't know, like a plumbing company or an air conditioning company. Like in Arizona, that's really important, right? Because it's so hot over summer.
It's important here too because it's really cold.
Yeah. So
you
things
could
that
freeze to death, but you're probably not going to melt to death.
Yes. So things that are really important and necessary for like everyday life, businesses like that, because they're not going anywhere. And the other thing that's really interesting too, if you think about it even from like a higher level, is a lot of money is made in mergers and in acquisitions. Bigger businesses coming in to absorb smaller businesses because they've already put in the time and money. So I think thinking about it from an individual perspective of I can do this too is really great. And that particular course was super fun because they actually had this couple, they were planning on purchasing a daycare and they had all of the numbers up, and then her entire crew kind of dissected this business performance and what questions they would ask prior to purchasing, and how much they would offer for it to make sense for them financially. So it was really cool to see them live break down a deal and give them feedback of what questions to ask the sellers to make sure that in this particular case, they had real estate attached to it. So they were currently leasing this facility, but the lease price is going to go up. So they're like, okay, well, you need to have this locked in order for this purchase price to make sense. And if it's not, then here's what we would offer. So things like that you would think to ask, which is why I think it's so fantastic being around people that are much smarter than you all the time, because it allows you to avoid costly mistakes. And then they had a lot of success cases of people that had purchased this mentorship and then purchased a business. And this one lady used to be a nurse, and then she bought a roofing company, and then she added a lot of marketing dollars to it. Like she deployed a lot of the cash flow that was coming into marketing, and she grew her company, and it's worth millions of dollars now, but it wasn't before. So she kind of went in there, changed a few things around, paid for marketing, and increased the value of the business, which is so fun because it's the same thing with real estate, right? Like if you rehab a property, you can then have a higher resale value. Same thing with a business. The difference is you're getting way more cash flow from that thing than you are going to be able to with a rental where you're getting $500 a month or whatever the case is. So
But
it's exciting.
What's interesting about what you just said is my brain goes to, hey, the person you're buying it from maybe doesn't understand marketing, maybe doesn't care about marketing, doesn't understand social media and the power of social media today. And maybe they're just old and tired. We get old and then we get tired of really working on our business and it just kind of settles because we're like, we're just tired. And so when you bring somebody fresh in that's excited because now they have this opportunity and they can market it and they understand marketing, because it doesn't matter what company it is, you need to market. And I heard something the other day from, I don't know, he's got yellow glasses. Anyway, he's a big marketing guy. He said that you shouldn't have to market. If you're so good, people should just refer. If you're the best HVAC guy in town, people should just be referring, which is really funny because my HVAC guy does not run an ad, like ever. And he is so busy, but he's really inexpensive and he's really good because he doesn't have to advertise. And he's not big and huge and he doesn't have all this overhead and he's running it. Is it right? I don't know. But the marketing piece of it is right. If you can market, fantastic. But I can imagine. Now, if you guys have listened to this podcast for any given time, you know my love-hate relationship with contractors and the fact that I want to take all of you contractors out there listening, every last one of you in the blue-collar industry, and hire you a secretary for, oh my gosh, I don't know why y'all think you should be answering the phone and you're the most unorganized people on the planet. This is not how it works. And so you can buy this business that didn't have a secretary and you can employ a secretary and now the business doubles in size because somebody is managing the work and getting back to people and communicating, we're doing just a lot of stuff right now, a lot of stuff. And we probably have 3 or 4 different contractors for different things that they all don't know how to communicate. Every last one of them does not know how to communicate. And I'm like, this wouldn't be that hard if you actually had a secretary. And in order to pay the secretary, you could charge me a little bit more and I'd probably be happier because I knew what was coming except the day you arrive. And I'm like, didn't know you were coming. And what do you mean you have questions today? Because I'm busy today and I can't tell you what I want today. And you should have asked me this winter when I contacted you. So it's like so many things that somebody that knows how to run a business or isn't scared to put some money behind marketing is going to grow that business. But I don't think that we think about a lot of that stuff. I think that we're just like, we'll start from scratch and hope for the best.
Yeah. And here's the thing, you totally can do that. And I think it's honestly a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot harder that way because you're starting from nothing versus starting from something that's already successful. I think that's really the main difference is this is already successful.
You are on the treadmill tripping over your shoelaces when you could have just had your shoes tied and take off running.
I think all things require work and intention. And I think if you don't think that, then I don't agree with you.
Did we talk anything about how to buy a business where they have been taking in a lot of cash and not showing income? Because a lot of people try to hide money.
So she was basically saying there's all these documents that they need to have verified. And one of them is tax returns, right? Your P&Ls, all of your accounting documents, all of those things need to be verified that they are accurate. And then they give you good questions to ask to make sure that everything is as they say it is. Because there was one gentleman who did buy a business and he said that the financials weren't what they had projected or said that they were. And it was kind of at the point where it was too late. So he figured it out. But they go through some things to verify what it is that you're purchasing. And one of the things that they say, which I really like, is like trust but verify. Like trust that this is the case and verify it just to make sure, which is a really good rule of thumb because I think we talk a lot about that, maybe in different language. I'm trying to think like what else is something that really stood out to me. There was a lot of people in that workshop and I was really excited about that because it just seems that everyone's like, this makes more sense and it's worth taking the risk for me to try it than it is for me to continue doing what I'm doing that's not working or that's not allowing me to live the life that I want to.
And there talk about finding the fit. Like, okay, there's all these businesses that are for sale, but which one fits me and my personality? And I mean, you got to do it every day. Like, you can't, like, I have clients that bought a tree farm and they're like, yeah, we're kind of over trees, you know? And so they're trying to sell their tree farm. Now, somebody else might love it, you know, but having to work with trees every day and you don't love trees, that may not be a fit. So they're just always trying to look for something else. And they also like Cody. So we talk about that when we visit. But what'd she have to say about that?
Basically that you have to define your own buy box. Like, okay, how much cash flow do you want per year as like an owner? Do you want to be an active participant or do you want to have someone manage it for you? And when you buy the business, is there a key employee that needs to make sure that they stay there for a couple of years in the contract in order for this to make sense for you? So they go through all of those particular things because the business is the asset. And what's cool is that financing for things like this are sometimes easier than purchasing a home. It's like, yeah, you still have to have a down payment, but even then sometimes the seller can finance the full thing for you. So there's just a lot of... And if you've been
building your policy along the way, you can finance it yourself through your policy, which is really nice because then you have that transition period of getting started where you might have some hiccups as well, taking over and figuring stuff out. I have a client that bought a feed store business and she just had a lot of outstanding. She was super smart about it. She did not take a lot of the old debt over like 90 days or something like that. But then she got some of that debt. And so she had to do collections and people just wouldn't pay because they're like, well, the old guy didn't want to get paid. They didn't pay attention that there was a change in ownership. And so some of these things are going to be hiccups, right? And so in her case, it's a super funny story actually. So I'm going to tell it. You know, she lives in a little town and they're all farmers. And these people aren't paying their bills. So she sends out some tatted and pierced guy, big dude, to collect and people paid right away. Now, I mean, there are farmers that are tatted. I have some guy comes up to me one day and he is like tatted head to toe. And he's like, hey, are you Mary Jo? I'm like, whoa. And you didn't know bikers were listening to me. You know, like that's what you think. Nope, he's just a cool farmer. And he's just got all kinds of tattoos. So anyway, that's not the typical scenario. And so these guys paid right away. So you got to find some creative ways as a new business owner to say, hey, I'm the new owner. I'm not going to allow these accounts receivable to just sit out there. You're having to pay. But I also think you gave me good insight, but it wasn't the exact question I was asking. Okay. Does she talk about, like, you need to be interested in it? Because if you're not interested in it, like the cash flow is there, the financials look good. Yeah, I'm going to be a silent partner, but I still have to give two craps about what I'm trying to sell or the product or the people or try to understand the industry at least.
There actually wasn't a lot of emphasis on that. It was more so like, does this business fit your lifestyle? Like the lifestyle that you're interested in living? Like, is it going to give you the cash flow that you want? Is it going to give you the time freedom that you want? Is it in a location that is something like, do you want to visit the location? And some people had very different opinions. Like one gentleman that she had on there owns a bunch of laundromats, but they're all in his general vicinity. Whereas some people purchased businesses that weren't super close to them because they didn't want to have to be as hands-on. Mm-hmm. So it was just one of those things where it's like, it just depends. Like I was speaking to a client or soon
I
to be
would
client.
need to be interested. I could not buy a fishing tackle business and be like, oh, look at that tackle. Oh my God,
Well,
I don't care. I don't care.
I don't care.
If I'm catching fish, we're good. If I'm fishing, we have a problem. Like, I don't care what tackle you use. And I don't want to own that business because I'm not going to be a good business owner. Because when you start talking about what you want to order, I'm just going to hear, wah, wah, wah.
So that would be the last business on your list to own,
Yeah.
you think?
And there's some things you should take note of. Like that would be one of them. We got some store. It's like a farm store, outdoorsy, whatever. There's a whole bunch of fishing stuff. And yesterday my husband's like, oh, I want to go back and walk through the fishing stuff. It's like aisles and aisles and aisles of lures. And I just don't care. And I'm like, oh, that one's pretty. Because, they're really colorful and they're pretty. But all the ones that women would pick, that you don't catch a damn fish on them. So what does it matter? Like I am now over all of these pretty lures because I never catch a fish on them. And so it's the ugly orange and yellow and gold and silver blah ones that you catch all your fish on. So I'm like, yeah, my husband will be like, oh, you like that one? I'm like, I do, but don't buy it because we're never going to catch anything on it. And so like, I just don't. This is how you know if you like stuff. Like when you're out with your spouse or friends and they're talking and your eyes roll in the back of your head and you're like, I don't want to buy that business. Like I shouldn't have a business of porta potties. I don't care.
About the
I'm
porta potty
interested to
experience?
talk to you about porta potties, but I don't want like all the gory details. Like that's not interesting to me.
I don't know. So here's the thing. Her whole thing is buy boring businesses. So I think it's in the name. It's like, okay, well, none of these are exciting, but they have been in existence for a really long time. So the chances that they're still necessary is going to be very high moving forward, which to me is exciting, but I am not going to like die on the hill of like HVAC units. So
Right.
I get that piece of it. But
Right.
I mean,
But if you don't care to know about it, you're going to get screwed by the employees, right? They could be saying, I'm going to be buying stuff that I don't really need, and you don't understand it. I think that there should, and I could be wrong. I mean, obviously, Cody knows more than I do on this subject, but I feel like there should be some interest. Anyway, okay, well, I'll let Cody know. Cody, if you're listening, maybe it's a subject you should touch on. Should you like what you do? Should you like the business and be interested in the business that you are going to purchase? Okay.
Right.
Anything else that might be a hill I have to die on? Is there?
Well, I think it's different too, right? Because it's like
Cody's at the top. I'm still stuck in the valley because I can't find the business.
We're passionate about infinite banking, and I think it's a big difference.
Is there other stuff that she touched on, like how to find these businesses?
Yeah, there were certain websites that you could look at. And I think she's kind of creating her own space where if you're a part of that group, that you have immediate access to these businesses that are on sale. So I think she's kind of positioning herself in more of like a broker sort of situation where people can list their businesses with her, or, you just have like more exclusive access from my understanding. But it was a really great workshop. Like it was an online thing and it was a full weekend. And I thought it was really, really well done. And I think a lot of times when you pay for like an educational thing, sometimes I'm left feeling with, well, that was like a lot of hoorah and not a lot of like tangible things that I can actually put into place to make my life better. And I was left feeling like she did a fantastic job of having really great speakers on there, really great information, case studies of people that have already purchased businesses and what they're doing with them, live deal breakdowns. It was like
speaks volumes because it was on Zoom. It was not an in-person event, which is where you typically feel more like you get to leave with some stuff and you get to meet people and talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
So that speaks volumes since it was online and a weekend when most people aren't paying attention.
Yeah, but that's the stuff that interests me. I always love like diving into things and learning more about them. I would recommend if someone hasn't or they're interested in it, like her content is really great. So
cool. I just look at it and go, okay, if that's what we want to do, should we be building our own banking system so that we can either buy it or we can use it for marketing when we if we're going to finance a business, can we use the cash value for marketing? Can we use it to buy newer vehicles if we needed a fleet of vehicles? A lot of businesses are going to have overhead. You're going to have parts. You're going to have, something that cost of goods. You're going to have inventory. That's the word I was looking for. You're going to have inventory to some extent. And so can we use the cash value for that? Because inventory is not turning. Maybe we have some dead inventory that hasn't been, used forever. Like my client that bought this feed store, clothing, cowboy boots, like just this enormous amount of clothing and vet supplies and feed that was that they're dusty. Like the vet supplies have probably expired. He's getting stuff in the store that's not selling. And so the cleanup of all of those things, like there's going to be some of that stuff where you're going to want to borrow cash value so that you have the luxury to pay that back when you want, how you want, interest only if you need to, until you can get it all cleaned out and clearanced out and get rid of it. That having that banking system and building that now, don't wait for the business to come in. Because my thought is if you're a W-2 employee and you are trying to get out of that world and you're wanting to buy a business right now, you have the ability because you have the guaranteed income. Are we putting money in a 401k or an IRA? What are we doing with our money? Can some of that be directed into a policy? Can we build the system today, make the sacrifice, beat Parkinson's law so that we have the money to build the business, start the business, buy a business, whatever that is, that we can then quickly move over because we don't have to say, oh, Mr. Banker's knocking on the door and you need to pay him. When I started my business, I used my IRA money, I put it into a policy, and I used that to start my business. The SBA was not knocking on my door saying, hey, Mary Jo, you need to pay us. Because in the life insurance world, we don't get paid 3 to 6 months. So it really depends on what the clientele was like, how fast cases were closing. And I would have not had that money to make those payments. There were months I didn't have any business in the beginning. That 5-year survival rate is a real rate. That is not, there is nothing in there that's a lie because it is so hard to get started. You have very little support. And so if you can buy into a business, that's great. But can we build something on the side that gives us a little bit of flexibility with less stress?
Which is really important because there's so many businesses nowadays that have like less than 30 days worth of cash reserves, and if they don't have incoming money. And it's like, okay, well, I think as a business owner, you have to prioritize having cash on your side, and the policy is the best place for that.
Mm-hmm.
And just make sure that you're diligent about putting stuff aside for a rainy day so that you have control over that cash when you need it versus having to have your hand out or hoping that you can get approved with financing,
Or having credit cards that are completely maxed out because you didn't have the money to start the business, which is what I did. Because, I heard about this and quit my job. Why wouldn't you? Stupid idea. So now all of a sudden you've got all this credit card debt and you have to make it work. Because what are you going to do? Like file bankruptcy so your credit cards are paid for? That's not an option for me as a person. I'm not going to file bankruptcy. So what can I do? And if I would have had enough in the policy, if I would have probably waited a year, then I would have been able to build that up and it would have been a much more comfortable transition versus, guess I'll do this in a month's time or whatever it was. So definitely be thinking about that. as you are listening to this, and if you are trying to buy a business or take over a business, it doesn't matter. You want to be in a position where you have access to some cash. And I think that while we're talking about it and I'm thinking about it, I'm going to mention it, is if you start a business, you no longer qualify for any kind of mortgage. And so I did not know this. Nobody told me this. But when you quit your job, you are not going to get a HELOC. You're not going to be able to refinance your house. They want 2 to 3 years worth of records. Now, I know somebody that bought a business, client of mine. They bought a business. There was income. They had the business for 3 years with proven income, and the bank still said, no, we're not giving you a HELOC.
Wow.
So if you need access to the HELOC money, or if you need access to equity in your home to run your business and expand your business, they're going to say, no, thank you. So you go get your HELOC before you quit your job, because you could go work at McDonald's and get a HELOC, but you can't own your own business and get a HELOC. And so a lot of people, even my son, when he quit his business, I said, do you have equity in your house? And he didn't, but his business partner did. And I said, then you better go get that HELOC before your 2 weeks is up, and you better not quit until the documents of that loan are signed, because they are not going to give you a loan. Well, he didn't listen. So,
as kids tend to do. Well, he's not a kid, he's an adult.
He didn't listen to me. He didn't listen to me. So they borrowed money from me at 9% instead, because he didn't want to have the loan against his house. And I get it. I 100% understand. But you're also in one of those boring businesses that she talks about, right? They're in construction. So they're building decks and putting in cabinets and putting in flooring. And like, the only way to lose at that job is to either suck or be super lazy. There's no like ands, ifs, or buts. And you can suck and still be busy, because people don't complain enough. People don't put enough reviews online about contractors that suck. Okay, we all know a love-hate relationship, remember? There's a lot of faulty contractors out there, just like there's a lot of slimy agents out there. And people don't expose them.
Yeah.
And they need to be exposed, because it's people's homes that are being destroyed because of this. Anyway, that is a whole nother podcast for me to complain about that.
So, moral of the story, if you are buying a business or something of that nature, or even real estate, whatever it is, put that money in your policy first, because it's also, I love like good consequence questions. So it's like, okay, if you buy this property and things go belly up, like what happens if you pay for it cash? It's like, well, now you're out cash and the house. But if you had put it in your policy first, you still have the earning potential of all of those dollars growing for you. And you have the business you invested in or purchased, and you have the real estate. So it's the best and asset. And I think I was kind of touching on this, but I wasn't sure if I fully got to the point. But I'm talking to this client, and he is using the policy specifically for that. Like, he has a 2-year plan he makes a really great income now, but he wants to purchase a cash flowing business. So he's putting the money for his down payment of that business inside of a policy. So it's like, you can accomplish a lot if you are strategic about where you're going. And I love that he had like a whole 5-year plan laid out and was like chipping away at it, because then it doesn't feel so immediate all at once.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you a leg up because you've prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's just I think that we need to have cash flowing businesses in order to retire. We're going to have some kind of cash flow. I don't know what that looks like. I do know that super wealthy people are not just sitting on real estate. I did see the other day that Alex Hormozy has some real estate, and I was surprised. But he owns equity. He's like in a syndication thing. And so he's put some money into big, huge commercial properties. It's not like he is owning little mom and pop homes. And so you've got these people. He owns part of a insurance company. He talks about that too. I'm sure it's a P&C company. He owns part of that. and there's some cash flow there. And so you have to, when you look at those ultra wealthy people, I am finding their cash flow is not coming from real estate. Their passive income is coming from businesses. What I'm curious about is you're trading people for people. And so in a mom and pop type real estate where I've got passive income, I'm trading people, renters for people, employees. And which ones do I prefer to work with over the other? They're people. So there's difficult in any situation. It's a matter of, in the passive one, do you have to manage those people like you're typically front lines in the real estate world, or you have a manager there too? Pick your hard is at the end of the day. And I think I actually was watching a video of Cody, and I think she has that on the back of her computer, a little sticker that says pick your hard, because nothing's going to be easy. What's easy is punching a clock. But then what's hard is not being able to afford groceries, not being able to retire, not being able to go on vacation. And so we have to pick our hard. We have to change our mindset. We need to become the banker. We need to become the business owner. For those of you that it's a fit. For some people, it's not going to be a fit, but it's not as difficult as people would think it is. And it's not as scary as people would think it is. It just requires a fast treadmill. Dodging.
So if you're good at dodging and running, then maybe it's for you.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Any other takeaways before we end this bad boy?
I'm trying to think. I wish I had my full list.
Does she have an average age of people that are buying in?
She didn't. No. But even on the, obviously you can see all the Zoom participants on the call, and there was a lot of young people, which was really fun to see. It's like people that are just not buying into.
How did you know they were young?
You could see them. Everyone's on camera.
Oh. Thought they had their age behind or something.
No.
Oh.
No. And there was a lot of people that had established careers and they were just kind of over it, or, they had been laid off, or, they just wanted to be in more of the driver's seat.
And sometimes you're not in the driver's seat. Here is, when stuff like the vid happens and the government shuts the country down, you're not in the driver's seat. Here, Tris and I were talking about a strategy for her to buy a rental property a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, Trissa, what's the worst case scenario? This is where I go. What is the worst case scenario? Are you going to be homeless? Because if it's that risky, Mary Jo's not taking that opportunity, right? I'm not going to be homeless over a situation. But if the worst case scenario is I buy this business and I failed and I'm not homeless because I had some equipment to sell or I had something to sell, okay, what was the risk? What was the risk? The risk was that I gave it a shot and I know some of the things I shouldn't do. So next time I do it, I'm good. My husband is not a risk taker. And so when we bought our Airbnb, he's like, what are we going to do with that? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, I don't know, but we're buying it. And I'm like, we'll turn it into an Airbnb. If that doesn't work, then worst case scenario, we'll rent it furnished. End of the world is we sell some furniture and lose a little bit of money. Ideally, no, not awesome. Could it happen? Yeah, I don't know. You're going to have to market it. You're going to have to put it on Airbnb. We're going to have to learn some stuff. But we're not going to be homeless over this. And so why not just try it? And he has gotten to the point where now he can kind of, when I bring crazy things up, he's just yeah, that's... I brought one up the other day about all these people that are becoming state nationals. Have you heard of that?
Is this if you don't have a social security number or something like that?
Yeah.
And don't pay taxes?
You don't want to pay taxes and you don't have to follow all these rules, whatever. And I was like, this is so interesting. Not that I would do it, but I find it interesting. And so I was on this website, and this guy's website was super funny. And he was going about all the state national stuff. And I kept looking. And the longer I kept reading, my quiet husband became I don't think that's a good idea. And he was just like, the longer I was on there, you could, like, the more stuff he said. And I'm like, okay, I better just quit, because the more I talk about it, the more alarming it is becoming to him.
And Scott is a man of few words. So if he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, he's learned to just let me go with my crazy ideas. But that one, he was like, no, we're going to stop that one. And it's not even an idea. I just wanted to know how it all works. So that, because I have clients that come in that are state nationals. And I need
But
to know.
Do they have social security numbers?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out, is that someone said one time, do you want my real social security number or my fake? And I'm like, but I don't know what that means. And so we can't get them insurance if they don't have a social security number, right? So I just like to learn about stuff. And what's the worst case scenario if you try something? Well, in this case, it would be jail. So I'm probably not going to choose that option, I don't look good in stripes. And so it's not like, you gotta figure it out. If you start the business, I was listening to this guy that bought a bunch of businesses, and then that's how he bought his ranches, because he owns several ranches. And he said the neighbors have this wish that he would lose the ranch that he just bought. And he said, even if I can't pay for it, I still have half a ranch more than I would have had if I didn't buy it to begin with. And so even if you buy a business and that business fails, or you start a business and that business fails, you have knowledge you didn't have before. You have a whole new appreciation for business owners that you did not have before. What is the risk?
I love that you phrase that too. You're like, well, what's the worst that can happen? You're not going to be homeless over it. I was like, that's a really good framing, because I'm such an overthinker that I was like, yeah, I would never be homeless. Like, my husband and I, we listen to a lot of comedy, and there was like a joke that Chad Daniels said that this guy on the street was like, careful, man, this could happen to you. And he was like, actually, it would take me a really, really long time to be homeless. Like, I have so much family and friends that I could stay with before that would ever even be a thing. And I forgot where I was going with this. But yeah, just like, what's the worst that can happen, basically, And to your point, you're going to have so much more knowledge after getting started than you would have if you just thought about it. And I always have to remind myself of that. So
the hardest part of starting a business. And there's a gal locally that reached out to me and said, oh, Mary Jo, I think I want to start a business, and you seem to be pretty business minded. So, could we chat? And so we chatted, and I said, here's the hardest part. You're going to lose a majority of your friends. They're not going to dislike you, but you're not going to have anything in common with them anymore, because they're not going to want to talk about business. And that's all you're going to want to talk about, because you're going to be so excited about your business. And she messaged me. This was like a month ago I spoke with her, and she messaged me last week and said, Mary Jo, it's already happening. Where can I find these people to hang out with that will want to talk about it? And I'm like, whoa, she hasn't even started her business yet. She's still researching it and figuring out how to get it started and that kind of thing. And she's already lost communication with some of them. That's going to be a problem. That's going to be harder than losing the business, because now those people are the ones that are silently saying, this isn't going to work. You're so dumb for doing that and quitting your job. And those are the ones that you're concerned about. Those people punching a clock, going to be greeters at Walmart because they don't have any money for retirement. And those are the people you're concerned about and what their judgment is. Who cares? You can laugh at me all day long if I fail. I tried. You didn't do anything.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, and I think we do so many things just out of fear of what other people think. And here's the thing, you only have one shot at life. And like, when you're 95, you're not going to be thinking about all of those other people's opinions. You're going to be reflecting on what you actually did and what you're proud of yourself for doing. I always call it like passing the rocking chair test. It's like, okay, if I'm 95, sitting on my porch in my rocking chair, am I going to be excited that I did this thing? Yes or no? And that's usually how I end up moving forward with things. It's like, okay, well then, yeah, let's do it because I don't want to live a life of any regrets. And I want to come here and be the best, biggest person I could be and live life on my terms. So,
And it's not for everybody. Entrepreneurship
No.
is not for everybody. But guess what? You wouldn't be employed if it wasn't for the entrepreneur. This
Mhm.
country wouldn't work if it wasn't for business owners. And so you have to think about that. Like somebody has to take the risk because if you're not, then somebody else is going to. And I mean, I don't know. I just see opportunity everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we need this and we need this and we need this. And it's all a matter of how bad you want it to work. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's a lack of knowledge that doesn't make it work. Sometimes it's needing that business partner to help you or somebody else to give you advice. And then you need to shut up and listen. Okay. So here's another piece of advice you didn't ask for is if you're broke and you're talking to a business owner that's successful and you're telling them that they're wrong, you are the problem because you don't get to have an opinion if you aren't the one making the money. I am not going to go to a successful business owner and they tell me that I need to do X, Y, and Z and I don't do it. Okay, we have a friend, Tris and I have a friend in this industry who he has a very, 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 very large agency. And he tells me what to do. And I say, don't tell me what to do because I'm not going to listen. And therefore, I won't ask you for advice because I'm not going to listen and that's going to upset you. So I am good with the size that I am. If I want to go further, then I will come to you when I'm ready to take action. But if you go to somebody wanting advice, not ready to take action, then you need to just not go. Because what's going to happen is you are going to upset that person. And I talked about this when I was on the Wealthy Cowboy podcast, is that wealthy people have no problem giving you advice. I love helping people get their business started. I don't love giving advice and people not following through. And then they come back to me whining 6 months later that they're in the same position. Did you do X, Y, and Z? Nope. Then we're done here. We are not having any further conversation. And so surround yourself with people, but take action. You don't have to on all of their advice, but if they've done it and it's worked for them and it's ethical, then why are you not doing it?
It's a great question. It's easy to get in our own way most of the time.
Because we're scared,
Mhm.
right? And we don't want to look a fool because all of our friends and family are looking at us. Our family thought we were complete fools when we started the Airbnb. And now they're like, oh my gosh, that was such a good idea.
Yeah. I think that's the downside of being like an early adopter. It's like, oh, this makes sense. Let's do it. And then it's like you have all the people waiting to see if it actually works in order for them to get started themselves.
Yeah. And then by the time they start, the rules have changed, the game has changed, the economy has changed, all this stuff has changed, and then they're late to the game again. Someone's got to try it. Someone's got to make the change. Someone's got to do the thing.
You're good at doing the things, Mary Jo. I feel like every time I talk to Mary Jo, she's already telling me about 5 other projects that she has going on that are new from last week. And I'm always so impressed. I'm like, wow, that's so fun.
Well, I'm not going to end up homeless. So we're good.
Yeah, so we're good to go. But
Yeah.
that's a good, like, what's a worst case scenario question I think is really helpful for people that are overthinkers like myself, because it does help you realize that you would do a lot of things in order to avoid being homeless.
Yeah.
And chances are you've got a lot of family and friends, that will support you if that's the case. So what do you have to lose?
What's the worst thing that could happen if you buy a life insurance policy and it doesn't work out? Cash it out and get some of your money back, or get all of your money back, get a little bit of money back. What's the worst case scenario? This isn't going to leave you homeless. We're so scared to do one tiny little thing. I don't care if it's start a business or buy a life insurance policy. We're so scared to do one thing that we do nothing. And then you have zero reason to whine and complain about where you're at. Zero, because I don't want to hear it. If you're taking zero action, we don't have anything to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you guys hear this, Tris and I will be together in Canada, or we will be just coming home from Canada. I don't know where we're at in recordings, but it'll be around there. So while we're in Canada, maybe go to the Without the Bank page, Facebook page, and maybe we'll post some pictures of our trip there.
Oh, we should do that. That's
But
going to
it'll
be
be
so much fun.
because Tris had a baby, so I haven't got to see her a lot.
I know. And it's going to be extra fun because I had a baby and I will not be bringing my baby.
Trista loves her child and her children.
I know, I make jokes like that all the time.
But if you guys have kids and you are like, oh, I don't like to leave them, then we are either not from the same cloth or you're lying. And I would bet to venture you're lying. Because I was never, ever sad about leaving my child.
I get sad, but also it just makes me feel like I've had a moment to
you get over it pretty quickly.
Be myself, you know, fully without someone needing something from me.
I felt guilty that you left, you know? And then, so Haley would like cry. So she'd be totally fine while I was gone. And then I would call and then she would cry. And then I got mad and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm not calling home anymore. Because if you're going to cry every time I call and you were just fine with your father 2 seconds ago, or grandma, or the neighbor, or whoever you were staying with, then, you know, I'll be home. So then I would not call until she got older and would quit crying.
Oh, well, it's hard. It's hard to hear them. It's hard to hear your babies cry.
Because then you feel like complete crap. And so I'm like, this makes me just not have a good time. So I don't want you crying because your father is 100% capable and he's here and you love him and you're having fun. And so, you know, you just miss me because you forgot about me.
Mm-hmm. She just remembered you weren't there. That's all it was.
Right.
She's like, but I miss you. Why aren't you here?
Yes. And you don't even notice if I don't call because you're so little. I mean, she was so little, you know. So
it's good to have space.
We'll be in Canada. It'll be fun.
It's going to be so fun. I can't wait. Mm-hmm. We're going to basically solve all of the world's problems in Canada. And then you guys will be able to hear about it when we get back.
We would take you with us, but we don't have the equipment for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And you know the routine. If you need us, Mary Jo at Without the Bank or Tarisa at withoutthebank.com. Get your book, schedule your appointment, start your policy. What's the worst case scenario? You're not going to end up homeless. All right. Have a good one.